Hey there guys, how are you doing? My name is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and welcome back. So today's topic is a little bit different from a normal Rule of Two Review topic, but it is still relevant, it's still important. I think that when you look at some of the more recent video game announcements or releases that we've had, as well as some upcoming games that we know to expect, recent announcements as well, it definitely is something that we're seeing a lot more of. And what we're doing is discussing the idea of remasters, something that has been a growing business in the video game industry for the last couple of years for sure. Again, normally this probably wouldn't be a topic I would feel compelled to talk about on Rule of Two Review, but with some recent announcements, and like I said, some recent games, it made me realize there's so much going on here, and I am starting to develop a pretty strong opinion about it. It's not even entirely a negative opinion, and it kind of made me realize that in a way we've maybe become complacent about this, and I don't even necessarily think that that's a bad thing either. So what's happening here? What actually happened that made me want to discuss this on a video for you guys? Well, two things. One is the recent release of a game you can see right here, Shadow of the Colossus, for the PlayStation 4, which is a remaster and a borderline pretty much remake from the ground up of a 2005 PlayStation 2 game, a game that is widely regarded to be one of the best games ever made, one of the best PS2 games, one of the best Sony exclusives of all time, just a fantastic game all around. And I've talked about it a little bit recently. I've never played it. I've been tweeting a lot about it, and this is my first time going through the game, and I'm absolutely loving it. There's a couple of things I might not love, but overall the experience has been really fantastic. So we have this game recently released and making a lot of news and headlines and getting great reviews, and it's super beautiful, and it's all fantastic. What a great remaster. Also, just in the last couple of days, we had this random announcement of another remaster coming to the Nintendo Switch of the video game The Blob, which was originally the first game, an exclusive Nintendo Wii release. And I discussed this on either a live stream or just a normal Q&A where somebody asked me about like random hidden gem games that I love, and The Blob was one of them, and I brought it up in that video how much I think that game was so freaking good. And it spawned a sequel that actually released multi-platform on the 360, PS3, and the Nintendo Wii at that time. But again, the first game, which is the upcoming remaster for the Switch, was exclusive to Nintendo. Now, there's one other piece of news circulating right now that also leads into this topic, and this is this apparent news of what seems to be a Spyro the Dragon trilogy remaster compilation that should be releasing sometime soon. To my knowledge, this isn't 100% confirmed, and I've also seen conflicting reports and article headlines stating it to be an exclusive to PS4, or it is going to be multi-plat, or it's going to be exclusive to PS4 temporarily before releasing on other platforms after the fact. So I don't even really know what the hard details are, and like I said, I don't even know that it's 100% confirmed, but similar to recent topics, I think it's one of those situations where there's smoke, there's fire. I've seen a lot of people cover this, so we might be looking at yet another collection of games coming out soon that are remasters, just like some other ones from last year. So all of this, amongst many other things, made me realize, man, we're still seeing the remaster video game culture thriving. It is really common. I mean, if you stop and think about it and look back on titles that have released over the past, you could probably even go back 6 or 7 years to tell you the truth, well into even the previous generation, the 360, the PS3, and the Wii, we've been seeing remastered games of either incredibly old games or very, very recent games, games that released on the most previous generation at that time, coming out for the current consoles. And I think the reason I even, again, further wanted to discuss this on a video is I still remember a time when this was starting to pick up and gain steam, and we were seeing more and more practices like these remasters and remakes and all these things. And I remember when it first kind of started, people were lashing out against it. The video game industry and a lot of gamers, myself included in some respects, and other people who I either know in real life as my good friends or other people on YouTube or on the internet and all that stuff, people were very much like, oh, another remaster, no more good ideas, lack of original ideas, we're not getting new ideas or new IPs, it's all sequels and remasters because no one wants to make new games. I mean, seriously, if you think about the remaster thing, it is insane, going back to pretty much the 7th generation, how much we've seen since then. There is, when I think of like a remaster that exists before that, the only one that immediately jumps to mind is the Resident Evil remake in the 6th gen for the GameCube, but I'm willing to bet that there's probably a couple of other titles for the 6th gen, or maybe even before then, that I'm brain farting. But if we leave the original GameCube Resident Evil remake out of the conversation, we can go back to the 7th gen, and there is so many stuff that will jump out in the last couple of years. I mean, heck, Bayonetta 1 and 2 are getting ready to re-release in just a couple of days from the recording of this video. There's also a ton of other games. There's the BioShock Collection, Metro Redux, Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, Modern Warfare, Remaster, Resident Evil 4, the Halo Collection, Gears of War Remastered. There's a Crash Bandicoot trilogy that just came out, Mario Kart 8, Pokken Tournament, Dark Souls 2, upcoming this year, Dark Souls 1, Silent Hill HD Collection, Final Fantasy X and X-2. Heck, there was even just a remake of Metroid 2 from the Game Boy, ported over to the Nintendo 3DS. Again, kind of similar to Shadow of the Colossus, it sort of gets itself into remake territory, where they redid so much of the game it's a little bit more of a new game. But it still kind of counts in the same respect also. So that's just a quick list of some games that you can just chronicle in your brain of the last couple of years, and there's plenty more. So anyway, what's the point of all this? What am I getting at? What is Rob even talking about when it comes to this whole remaster thing? And you know, I think I wanted to break down whether or not I like this or I don't like this, or if I see this as a good thing or a bad thing. It's really just that, because like I was alluding to before I started spouting off all of those game titles, if you guys remember, 6-7 years ago when this was happening, like even when I've left off this list, The Last of Us, when that was getting ported over to the PS4 in the first year of the PS4's life, even at that point, just a few years ago, people were very vocal about how garbage remasters are, no more new ideas, there's no good games on the PS4 because they have to remaster a game that just came out the previous year on the last system. And so conversations like that were the dominant force of the whole remaster situation, and no one was happy with it. And again, I understand why. There's definitely been many times where I was just like, oh geez, another remaster, another game that had already released, and because no one wants to make brand new games, which is something Capcom has had a problem with for a while, since people don't want to make new games, they would rather take games that everyone loved 5, 6, 10 years ago and just re-release those and just make people double and triple dip. And that's also something where I've fed the problem, because I have double and triple dipped many times. I mean, here are 3 games right here that are games that have already released that I own. I mean, there's 2 Zelda games on the Wii U that are also remasters, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, you know, and I have certainly double dipped. So bringing it back here to kind of the main point of this conversation so I can end this here. Do I like this or do I not? So, yes, it was a problem many, many years ago, and people were pissed about it forever, but we have started to get complacent. Like I started the conversation at the beginning of this video, no one really talks about this anymore. The conversation about remasters being a negative thing and having a negative impact on the gaming industry, or being a sign of stifled creativity and developers and companies just aren't interested in coming up with new ideas or making new games. They would rather rehash old games. We're kind of accepting it now a little bit more, and I kind of wonder why that is. So believe it or not, the reason I think that is happening and people aren't mad at remasters anymore is actually weirdly a good thing. And I think it's because we're actually seeing so many great games across the board, including brand new releases that aren't remasters. Now, there is still a different conversation and a different problem that I won't go into here that has to do with sequels, as opposed to new IPs and new ideas. For the most part, we're mostly seeing those come only in the indie space, and I do think that that's great, but it would be nice if more of the AAA space was doing the same thing. But if we remove the conversation of if you're a sequel or a new IP, and we just look at brand new releases of games that are being developed brand new at that time, there's so much of that right now. The 8th generation, kind of 9th if you throw in the Switch, and based on how you want to look at that stuff, like the current consoles, PS4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PC, we're seeing a lot of great games. I mean, we have really hit our stride right now in the gaming industry and in this hobby, and it's great to see there are so many new games coming out across the board that are so fun to play. It helps that we have a healthy Nintendo as well, because just 2 years ago, we didn't have a healthy Nintendo and a healthy Nintendo console, and I think that was part of the bigger problem of lack of new games and new ideas. But now that we have Nintendo, Sony, okay, Nintendo and Sony are firing on all cylinders. Microsoft is kind of floundering a little bit, but still there are good new multi-platform games releasing on the Xbox One, and again, also the PC. So we're seeing so many great games that when we get announcements of a Shadow of the Colossus and a Bayonetta 2, Spyro the Dragon to Blob, whatever else is going to continue to happen, at this point, I don't think that people are feeling like, oh, I have no good new games to play, so I guess I have to keep rebuying the old crap I already bought. Thanks, Nintendo. No, instead people are like, man, I've got so many great games to play that are brand new all the time. In fact, I have too many great games to play. The occasional remastered game that I already know that I love, I mean, hey, that's fine. It actually just gets me excited to revisit something that I already liked. Maybe we have new features, new modes, new graphics, things that make it exciting. And it's like at this point, even though the remaster game culture, I think, is at its peak, its maximum peak it's been since this started, there's so many other great games coming out currently that really they're just complementing every other game that most of us are playing. And it's really exciting, and I think it's why, A, most people aren't complaining about this and having a problem with it anymore, and B, I'm also not having a problem with it. I think it's great. I love the fact that I'm playing through Shadow of the Colossus right now, and it's freaking fantastic. Honestly, this game has such a legendary status, and I've never played it. To tell you the truth, if we didn't get this remaster, it's probably a game I never would have played. Not because I wasn't interested, but because I wasn't going to go through the hassle of finding a copy and getting a CRT TV. I mean, I do have a PS2. Finding a good TV to play it on. I'd have to buy a new controller. My PS2 controller is kind of garbage, actually. Although I think I have two of them, so maybe one works. Either way, it's just more of a hassle. But a brand spanking shiny new copy with a redone graphics engine and music and all this cool stuff, way easier for me to buy into. Plus, as I discussed recently as well, it's at a discounted price, which is pretty fantastic. So in wrapping this up, I think that's what's pretty neat to see when it comes to remasters. I think we really are, as the title of this video says, I think we're okay with this now. I don't think it's a problem. Yeah, 7 years ago when this started and we saw more and more of this stuff happening, it made us all wonder, where are the new games? Why have all of you companies with all of your talent in this industry decided to stop creating new games? Whether they're sequels or not, you still could make a new game. Why are you remastering an old game that I've already bought? That was a problem, but hey, now we're all cool with it, man. We've got so many good games to play. The time and energy going into a lot of these remasters is also really fantastic. I mean, that Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy remaster looks fantastic. I haven't played it yet. It looks really great. Wind Waker is like one of the greatest remasters I think I've ever played. Again, I mean, I could keep praising Shadow of the Colossus. I should probably stop talking about it. I mean, everything, all these other remasters, I have this list here. I mean, the Gears of War remaster is awesome. I think Halo Master Chief Collection was absolutely fantastic. All of the Resident Evil remakes, they've redone 4 a couple of times. The remake of the original game on the GameCube, and then also this current generation. All that stuff that I've played, I've really loved them, man. They've been doing a lot of good work when it comes to these remasters. So, yeah, it was a problem 7 years ago, but nowadays, I think it's cool. I think we're totally fine here. So I think that's going to be it for me today on this topic. But as always, I do want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you like that we get so many remasters right now? Do you hate that we get so many of them? Have you always hated them? Do you think that the situation has improved like I think? And especially with A, the quality of the remasters, and B, all of the other fantastic new games we're constantly getting, kind of makes it a wash and makes it so that it's all okay and there's really no damage being done. And we're seeing a lot of creativity coming from a lot of the AAA game makers, a lot of the console manufacturers, and obviously the indie space and all of those fantastic developers. I don't really think that having a couple remasters a year is really doing damage like it was 5 or 6 years ago. And do you guys agree or do you disagree? Definitely discuss it below. Thanks, of course, as always, so much for tuning in, guys. I do always appreciate your fanship and support of Rule of 2 Review. And this is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.